The velvet box felt heavier than it should have as I knelt on one knee in my parents' living room. Christmas Eve dinner had wound down to coffee and dessert. My whole family gathered around the fireplace, their faces glowing with warmth and anticipation. My sister Laura had her phone out, ready to capture the moment. My mother clutched my father's arm, tears already forming in her eyes. "Vanessa Cole," I began, my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. "We've been together for 3 years. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" I opened the box, revealing the diamond ring I'd spent 6 months saving for. Not the biggest stone in the world, but honest money from my IT project management salary. Clean, clear, and bought with love. Vanessa stared down at me, her perfect blonde hair catching the firelight, her green eyes scanning the ring with an expression I couldn't quite read. The room held its breath. Even the Christmas tree lights seemed to dim in anticipation. Then she laughed. Not the joyful, tearful laugh of a woman overwhelmed with happiness. A cold, cutting sound that sliced through the warm air like a blade. "Are you serious right now?" She took a step back, her voice rising. "This ring is tiny and pathetic, just like you, Evan." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I stayed on one knee, frozen in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not like this. "I mean, what did you expect? That I'd say yes to this?" She gestured at the ring with disgust. "I've been seeing Ryan Harper for months. He drives a BMW and actually has prospects. You're just some tech nobody who thinks he can buy love with a discount engagement ring." My mother gasped. Laura lowered her phone, her mouth hanging open. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Vanessa leaned down, her face inches from mine, and did something that burned itself into my memory forever. She spat directly in my face. "Merry Christmas, loser." The warm saliva ran down my cheek as I slowly closed the ring box and rose to my feet. My family sat in stunned silence, their holiday joy shattered like dropped ornaments. Vanessa stood there, arms crossed, looking satisfied with her performance. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a handkerchief, and carefully wiped my face. When I spoke, my voice was calm, almost conversational. "Get out of my parents' house." "Gladly. This whole place smells like mediocrity anyway." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood. "Oh, and Evan, don't bother calling. I'm blocking your number." The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Lara jumped up and wrapped her arms around me. "Evan, I'm so sorry. She's horrible. You're better off without her." My mother approached cautiously, her eyes filled with concern. "Honey, are you all right?" I looked around at their worried faces, these people who loved me unconditionally, and felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Not heartbreak, not sadness, something harder and more focused. "I'm fine," I said, and meant it. Actually, I think this might be the best Christmas gift I've ever received. Because now I knew exactly who Vanessa Cole really was, and more importantly, I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. I spent the rest of Christmas Eve with my family, accepting their hugs and reassurances while my mind worked through possibilities. Vanessa had humiliated me in front of the people I loved most. She'd thrown 3 years of relationship in my face like it meant nothing. She'd been cheating with Ryan Harper, that smug public relations executive who treated everyone like they were beneath him. But she'd also just handed me something valuable. The truth. And in my line of work, information was power. By the time I got home to my apartment that night, I had a plan forming. Vanessa thought she could embarrass me and walk away clean. She thought her cruelty would have no consequences, that she could move on to Ryan and his BMW without looking back. She was wrong. I sat down at my computer and began typing. First, I changed all the passwords to the streaming accounts she used. Then, I canceled the credit card I'd foolishly added her as an authorized user on. The gym membership I'd been paying for, canceled. The expensive skincare subscription, gone. It was nearly midnight when I finished, but I wasn't tired. I felt more awake than I had in months. Vanessa had been using me, probably for longer than I wanted to admit. The designer clothes, the fancy dinners, the weekend trips to ski resorts. I'd been funding a lifestyle for someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient wallet. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Vanessa, trying to reach me from a different phone. "What did you do to my accounts? This isn't funny, Evan. Change everything back right now." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, and I had work to do. The next morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry messages from various numbers. Vanessa had clearly borrowed phones from friends, each text more demanding than the last. She'd tried to use the credit card at some upscale boutique and had it declined in front of her friends. The humiliation was already beginning. I made myself coffee and settled in for a productive holiday morning. Social media was my next target. Vanessa lived for her Instagram presence, carefully curated photos of her glamorous life that attracted thousands of followers. She posted constantly about her relationship with me, but always in a way that made it seem like she was doing me a favor by dating down. I started screenshotting everything. 3 years of posts, comments, and tagged photos. The evidence of her true character was all there, hidden in plain sight. The way she mocked my job to her friends in the comments, the photos of expensive gifts where she never mentioned who bought them, the subtle digs at my background, my family, my apartment. She thought she was clever, but Vanessa had documented her own shallow nature in excruciating detail. My sister called around noon to check on me. "How are you holding up, big brother?" "Better than expected," I told her honestly. "I'm starting to see last night as a blessing in disguise." "Good, because I've been looking at her Instagram this morning, and she's already posted pictures with some guy at brunch. Is that Ryan?" I felt a spike of satisfaction. "Probably. She's not exactly the type to waste time grieving." "The comments are interesting, though. Some of her friends are asking what happened to you. She's not responding to any of them." This was perfect. Vanessa's hasty transition to Ryan was raising questions among her social circle. People who had seen us together for 3 years were confused by the sudden change. Her silence was only making it more suspicious. "Laura, do me a favor. Don't say anything about what happened last night on social media, not yet." "Why not? Everyone should know what a horrible person she is." "They will, but timing is everything." I spent the rest of Christmas Day gathering intelligence. Ryan Harper's social media profiles, his company information, his connections to Vanessa's friend group. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a sudden romance. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Ryan worked for a competing PR firm, one that had been trying to poach clients from my company. Vanessa had access to information about my projects, my clients, my strategies. She'd been in my apartment countless times, had seen documents, overheard phone calls. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made my jaw clench with anger. This wasn't just infidelity. This was corporate espionage wrapped in a love affair. By evening, I had enough information to start phase 2 of my plan. Vanessa wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd chosen to play with someone who understood systems, who knew how to gather data and use it strategically. She'd humiliated me in front of my family on Christmas Eve. Now it was time to return the favor with interest. I opened my laptop and began composing the first of several carefully crafted messages. Not angry rants or emotional outbursts. Something much more dangerous. The truth delivered to exactly the right people at exactly the right time. Vanessa Cole had no idea what was coming for her. The morning after Christmas brought fresh snow and a delicious sense of anticipation. I'd slept better than I had in weeks, my mind clear and focused on the task ahead. Vanessa thought she'd won by humiliating me and moving on to Ryan. She had no idea that she'd actually handed me every tool I needed for her destruction. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 32 text messages from various numbers. Vanessa was getting desperate, trying to reach me through mutual friends, work colleagues, even my gym. Each unanswered message only amplified her frustration. I made breakfast and settled down to study my target. Vanessa Cole, marketing executive at Sterling Communications, social media influencer with 12,000 followers, and self-proclaimed lifestyle guru. Her entire identity was built on image management and public perception, which made her incredibly vulnerable to the right kind of attack. I started with her professional network. Sterling Communications was a mid-sized marketing firm that specialized in luxury brands. Vanessa had worked there for 2 years, building a reputation as someone who could connect with affluent millennials. Her Instagram feed was essentially a marketing portfolio, showcasing her ability to make expensive products look desirable. But I'd noticed something interesting in her posts over the past few months. Subtle changes in the brands she promoted, the events she attended, the people she photographed with. She was gravitating toward clients and connections that overlapped with Ryan's firm. I pulled up Ryan's company website, Harper & Associates, boutique public relations specializing in crisis management and reputation repair. Ryan was a senior account executive, handling several high-profile clients in the fashion and hospitality industries, the same industries where Vanessa had been building her influence. I spent the morning mapping their networks, identifying the connections and overlaps. Social media made it easy. people tagged each other constantly, creating a digital paper trail of relationships and interactions. Within a few hours, I had a clear picture of their scheme. Vanessa had been using her position at Sterling to gather intelligence on upcoming campaigns and client strategies. She'd pass this information to Ryan, who would use it to undercut Sterling's proposals and steal clients. In return, Ryan would introduce her to his contacts, helping her build the influencer brand she craved. It was elegant, profitable, and completely unethical. My phone rang, interrupting my research. The caller ID showed my boss, Hamilton Industries. I'd been working as their lead IT project manager for 5 years, handling everything from system upgrades to cybersecurity protocols. Evan? Sorry to bother you on the holiday break, but we've got a situation. What kind of situation, Mr. Hamilton? Someone's been asking questions about our Sterling Communications project. Detailed questions about timelines, budgets, technical specifications. The kind of information that shouldn't be public knowledge. I felt my pulse quicken. What kind of questions? Competitive intelligence gathering, most likely. My contact at Sterling mentioned that Harper and Associates submitted a proposal that was suspiciously similar to ours. Too similar to be coincidental. The pieces clicked into place with an almost audible snap. Vanessa had been in my apartment when I worked on the Sterling project. She'd seen documents, overheard conference calls, even helped herself to my laptop while I was in the shower. I think I might know how they got their information, I said carefully. Oh? Let me make some calls and get back to you. But Mr. Hamilton, you might want to review our security protocols for the Sterling project. All of them. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. Vanessa and Ryan had just escalated this from personal revenge to professional warfare. And in that arena, I had significant advantages. I called my friend Greg Martinez, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator. Greg specialized in corporate security and had helped my company with several internal investigations. Evan, how was your Christmas, buddy? Interesting. Listen, I need a favor. Hypothetically, if someone was passing confidential business information to a competitor, what would be the best way to prove it? Greg's tone shifted to professional interest. Hypothetically, digital forensics mostly. Email trails, file access logs, phone records. Why? You got a mole problem at work? Maybe. Can you do some discreet research on 2 people for me, Vanessa Cole and Ryan Harper? Your girlfriend, Vanessa. What's going on? Ex-girlfriend as of Christmas Eve, and I think she's been using me to steal client information. Greg whistled low. Corporate espionage? That's serious stuff, Evan. You sure about this? Sure enough to pay your rates for a full investigation. All right. Send me their details and I'll see what I can dig up. But be careful, man. If they're really stealing client data, they're not going to take kindly to being exposed. After sending Greg the information, I turned my attention to social media. Vanessa's Instagram story from that morning showed her at an expensive spa with Ryan, both of them looking relaxed and happy. The location tag showed it was the kind of place that cost more than most people made in a week. Interesting, considering that Vanessa had been complaining about money just last month. She'd even asked me to help with her rent, claiming that a big client payment was delayed. I'd transferred her $1,500 without question. I screenshotted the spa photos and checked the timestamp. Posted at 10:47 a.m., just 3 hours after she'd sent me an angry text demanding I restore her credit card access. She was clearly not hurting for money if she could afford luxury spa treatments. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, but it was also useful. Every post, every photo, every public display of wealth was evidence of her deception. She was documenting her own lies in real time. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Have you seen Vanessa's Instagram today? She's posting like nothing happened. Some of her friends are asking questions in the comments. I checked the comments on Vanessa's latest post. Several people were indeed asking about me, wondering where I was and why I wasn't in any of her recent photos. Vanessa was deleting the comments as fast as they appeared, but not before other people noticed. Social media created its own momentum. The more Vanessa tried to control the narrative, the more obvious it became that something was wrong. Her friends weren't stupid. They could see the inconsistencies. I decided it was time to plant some seeds. I created a fake email account and sent a carefully worded message to Jules Patterson, one of Vanessa's closest friends and biggest gossips. Jules worked in fashion PR and knew everyone in their social circle. Hi, Jules. I hope you don't mind me reaching out anonymously, but I thought you should know that Vanessa has been saying some pretty harsh things about you behind your back. She told several people at the Morrison Gallery opening that you only got your job because your dad knows the owner. She also mentioned that your boyfriend is way out of your league and probably cheating. I know you two are close, so I thought you deserved to know what she's really saying about you. I sent similar messages to 3 other people in Vanessa's inner circle. each one carefully crafted to exploit existing insecurities and rivalries. I didn't make anything up. I simply repeated things Vanessa had actually said to me in private moments when she thought she was being clever and catty. The beauty of it was that these were all true statements. Vanessa really had said these things. She really did talk about her friends behind their backs, or using their secrets as entertainment and their insecurities as ammunition for her own ego. I was just making sure her victims knew about it. Within hours, the effects were visible. Jules posted a cryptic Instagram story about fake friends and two-faced people. Another friend, Amanda, liked the post and added her own comment about people who smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. Vanessa's social media engagement dropped noticeably. The likes and comments that usually flooded her posts slowed to a trickle. Her friends were pulling back, creating distance while they processed what they'd learned. I spent the evening monitoring the situation, watching as Vanessa's carefully constructed social network began to fracture. She was trying to reach out to her friends, but they were responding with cool politeness instead of their usual warmth. By 10 p.m., Vanessa was calling me again. This time I answered. "What did you do?" Her voice was tight with panic. "I'm sorry. Who is this?" "Don't play games with me, Evan. My friends are acting weird and my accounts are still locked. Fix this right now." "I'm afraid I don't understand. We broke up, remember? You made that very clear on Christmas Eve." "That doesn't mean you can sabotage my life." "I haven't sabotaged anything. I simply stopped paying for services I was providing to my girlfriend. Since we're no longer together, it seemed like the logical thing to do." "You know that's not what I mean. My friends—" "Your friends are what, exactly? Treating you the way you treat other people? That sounds like a personal problem." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You have no idea what you're messing with. Ryan has connections you can't even imagine. We can destroy your career with a phone call." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. Back off, or you'll regret it." She hung up before I could respond, but I was smiling. Vanessa had just confirmed everything I suspected about her relationship with Ryan and their professional collaboration. She'd also made a tactical error by threatening me directly. I immediately called Greg and left a voicemail about the threat. Then I set up call recording on my phone for any future conversations. If Vanessa wanted to escalate this to threats and intimidation, I'd make sure there was a permanent record. As I got ready for bed, I reflected on the day's progress. Vanessa's social circle was fragmenting. Her professional schemes were about to be exposed, and she was making increasingly desperate moves that only made her look worse. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, I would start phase 3, professional consequences. Vanessa had humiliated me in front of my family. She'd stolen confidential information and used it to betray my employer's trust. She'd threatened my career and my reputation. Now, it was time to show her what real consequences looked like. The next morning brought a call from Greg that confirmed my worst suspicions and best hopes. "Evan, you need to hear this. I've been digging into Vanessa and Ryan's communications, and what I found is going to blow your mind." I put him on speaker and grabbed a notepad. "What did you find?" "Email chains going back 6 months. Vanessa's been feeding Ryan detailed information about Sterling Communications' client strategies, campaign budgets, even internal personnel decisions. But here's the really interesting part. Ryan's been paying her for it." My pen stopped moving. Paying her. Monthly transfers of $3,000, disguised as consulting fees, for something called V. Cole Marketing Solutions. She set up a fake LLC to hide the payments. The implications hit me like a truck. Vanessa hadn't just been cheating on me emotionally and romantically. She'd been running a systematic corporate espionage operation, selling out her own employer for cash. "There's more," Greg continued. "Ryan's firm has won 4 major accounts in the past 6 months, all of them stolen from Sterling Communications. We're talking about nearly $2 million in billings that should have gone to Vanessa's company. Can you prove the connection?" "Absolutely. The email timestamps show Vanessa sending confidential Sterling documents to Ryan days before Harper & Associates submitted competing proposals. It's textbook industrial espionage." I felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with genuine anger. This wasn't just about our relationship anymore. Vanessa had been betraying innocent colleagues, people who trusted her and considered her a friend. She'd been stealing money from her own company to fund her lifestyle. "Greg, I need you to compile everything into a comprehensive report. Official documentation, legal language, the works. Already on it. But Evan, you need to think carefully about how you want to play this. Once this information goes public, there's no taking it back. Vanessa and Ryan are looking at serious legal consequences." "Good. They earned them. After hanging up, I called Mr. Hamilton and requested an emergency meeting. Within an hour, I was sitting in his office with Greg's preliminary findings spread across the conference table. Mr. Hamilton studied the documents with the focused intensity of a man who'd built his business on trust and integrity. After 20 minutes, he looked up with genuine anger in his eyes. "This is worse than I thought. They didn't just steal one project, they've been systematically targeting our clients for months. What do you want to do about it?" "First, we're calling our lawyers. This is criminal fraud, and I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Second, we're notifying Sterling Communications immediately. They deserve to know they have a traitor in their ranks. And third," Mr. Hamilton smiled grimly, "third, we're going to make sure everyone in the industry knows exactly what kind of people Vanessa Cole and Ryan Harper really are." The next few hours moved with the swift efficiency of corporate justice. Our lawyers confirmed that Vanessa and Ryan had committed multiple felonies, including wire fraud, theft of trade secrets, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming, and the paper trail was crystal clear. I personally called Sterling Communications' CEO and requested an immediate meeting. Within 2 hours, I was sitting across from Margaret Sterling herself, watching her face grow increasingly pale as I walked through the evidence. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "At least 6 months, possibly longer. My investigator is still analyzing the full scope, but we've identified at least 4 major accounts that were compromised." Margaret Sterling was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built her company from nothing. She didn't get angry. She got focused. "I want copies of everything, and I want Vanessa Cole's access revoked immediately." "There's something else you should know," I said carefully. "Vanessa is probably going to claim that I'm doing this for personal reasons. We broke up on Christmas Eve, and she might try to frame this as revenge." "Is it?" "Revenge, I mean." I considered the question honestly. "Partially, yes. But the evidence speaks for itself. Even if I hated her guts, the documents don't lie." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Good. I respect honesty, and frankly, I don't care what your motivations are. If she's been stealing from my company, she's done." That afternoon, Vanessa Cole was fired from Sterling Communications. Security escorted her from the building while her colleagues watched in shock. Her corporate email and system access were terminated immediately. But Margaret Sterling didn't stop there. She also filed a formal complaint with the Better Business Bureau and the Professional Marketing Association, documenting Vanessa's unethical conduct for future employers to discover. Ryan Harper's situation was even worse. His firm's partners called an emergency meeting when they learned about the corporate espionage charges. By evening, Harper and Associates had issued a public statement terminating Ryan's employment and cooperating fully with law enforcement. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, monitoring social media and news feeds as Vanessa's professional life imploded in real time. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared. Her professional Instagram account went private. The carefully constructed image of success and competence crumbled within hours. My phone rang constantly throughout the day. Vanessa called from different numbers, her voice growing increasingly desperate with each conversation. "You destroyed my career. How could you do this to me?" "I didn't do anything to you, Vanessa. I simply reported your crimes to the appropriate authorities." "They were my clients too. I helped build those relationships. By stealing confidential information and selling it to competitors. That's not relationship building. That's fraud." "Ryan said you'd try to sabotage us. He said you were vindictive and pathetic." "Ryan is facing federal charges for wire fraud. I'm not sure I'd trust his judgment right now." Each conversation followed the same pattern. Vanessa would start with anger, escalate to threats, then collapse into pleading. She couldn't seem to grasp that her actions had consequences, that betraying people's trust carried a real cost. By evening, the story had spread throughout their professional network. Marketing and PR were small industries where everyone knew everyone else. Word traveled fast, and Vanessa's reputation was toxic within hours. Jules Patterson called me directly around 8 p.m. "Evan, this is Jules. I hope you don't mind me reaching out." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" I wanted to apologize. Some of us suspected that Vanessa wasn't being completely honest about your relationship, but we didn't know how bad it really was. "What do you mean?" "She's been telling people that you were controlling and possessive, that you monitored her social media and tried to isolate her from friends. But now that we know about the corporate espionage thing, it's obvious she was projecting. This was news to me. She said I was controlling?" Among other things, she painted herself as the victim of an unhealthy relationship. But honestly, none of it made sense. You never seemed controlling when we hung out. If anything, you were incredibly patient with her drama. "Her drama?" Jules laughed bitterly. Come on, Evan. You know how she is. Everything is always about her. Every conversation, every social event, every crisis. It all has to revolve around Vanessa and her needs. I realized that Jules was right. Vanessa's friends had seen through her manipulation long before I did. They'd been polite about it, but they'd noticed the patterns of narcissism and self-centeredness. Why didn't anyone say anything? What were we supposed to say? Your girlfriend is incredibly selfish, and we don't understand why you put up with it? That's not exactly a conversation anyone wants to have. After hanging up with Jules, I reflected on how thoroughly I'd misjudged the situation. I'd thought Vanessa's friends were loyal to her, but they'd actually been tolerating her behavior out of social politeness. Once they had permission to express their real feelings, the floodgates opened. My sister called around 9 p.m. with an update from the social media front. Evan, you need to see what's happening on Instagram. Vanessa's friends are posting about her, and it's brutal. I pulled up Instagram and started scrolling. Jules had posted a long story about fake friends who lie and manipulate. Amanda had shared a post about people who steal from their employers. Even some of Vanessa's work colleagues were posting cryptic messages about workplace betrayal and corporate ethics. Vanessa's social media presence, once vibrant and engaging, had become a ghost town. Her latest posts had almost no engagement. The comments that did appear were mostly from people asking uncomfortable questions about her employment status and legal troubles. She tried to fight back with a post claiming she was the victim of a vindictive ex-boyfriend who was spreading lies about her. But the post backfired spectacularly when several people commented with links to news articles about the corporate espionage charges. By 10 p.m., Vanessa had deleted most of her social media accounts entirely. The influencer brand she'd spent years building was gone, erased in a single day of consequences. I should have felt satisfied. Vanessa had humiliated me in front of my family, stolen from her employer, and threatened my career. She was facing exactly the kind of consequences her actions deserved, but I wasn't done yet. Tomorrow, I would begin the final phase of my plan. Vanessa had taken everything from me, my trust, my dignity, my sense of security. She'd turned our relationship into a lie and our intimacy into a weapon. Now it was time to take everything from her. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was having coffee and reviewing Greg's final investigation report when my building's doorman called to announce that Ryan Harper was in the lobby demanding to speak with me. "Send him up," I told the doorman. "This should be interesting." Ryan arrived at my door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. The confident swagger that had defined him was completely gone. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Do we? I thought you were too busy stealing my company's clients to have conversations." "Look, I know you're angry about Vanessa, but this has gone too far. You've destroyed both our careers over a relationship that was already over anyway." I leaned against my doorframe, studying him. "Really? Because from where I stand, I simply reported criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. The fact that it destroyed your careers suggests you were doing something worth destroying. Vanessa told me you were obsessive and controlling. She said you monitored her communications and tried to isolate her from friends." "And you believed her?" Ryan's confidence flickered. "She had screenshots of your texts, examples of you questioning where she was going and who she was with." I almost laughed. "You mean I acted like someone in a committed relationship who cared about my girlfriend's well-being? How terrible of me." "That's not... Ryan, let me ask you something. In all the months you were seeing Vanessa behind my back, did she ever mention that I was paying for her apartment, her credit cards, her gym membership, and most of her social activities?" His face went pale. "What?" "She was living off my income while selling corporate secrets to fund her side business with you. I wasn't controlling her. I was subsidizing her betrayal." Ryan stared at me for a long moment, then slumped against the hallway wall. "She told me she had family money. She said her lifestyle came from a trust fund." "There is no trust fund. There's just me, working 60-hour weeks to pay for a girlfriend who was stealing from her employer and lying to everyone about everything." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "You didn't want to know. You wanted to believe you were stealing her away from some controlling loser, not participating in fraud and embezzlement." Ryan looked up at me with something approaching desperation. "What do you want? Money? I can pay you back for whatever she cost you." "I don't want your money, Ryan. I want you to understand something important. Actions have consequences. You can't steal people's work, betray their trust, and expect to walk away clean." "So what happens now? Now you face the legal system like an adult. You cooperate with the investigation, you accept responsibility for your choices, and you hope the judge is feeling merciful." Ryan left without another word, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him walk away and felt a moment of something that might have been pity. He'd been manipulated by Vanessa almost as thoroughly as I had, just in a different direction. But sympathy didn't change the facts. He'd made choices, taken actions, and hurt innocent people. The consequences were earned. My phone rang an hour later. Vanessa, calling from yet another number. "I know Ryan came to see you," she said without preamble. "Did he? I meet with a lot of people." "Don't play games. He told me what you said about the money, about me using you." "Was any of it untrue?" Silence. Then, "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The marketing industry is incredibly competitive. I had to find ways to stand out, to build connections. By stealing. By being strategic. Everyone does it, Evan. Everyone shares information and helps their contacts. I just happened to be more successful at it." The casual way she dismissed her crimes was breathtaking. Even now, facing legal charges and professional ruin, she couldn't acknowledge that she'd done anything wrong. "Vanessa, you stole trade secrets and sold them to competitors. That's not networking, that's felony fraud. And you destroyed my entire life over it. Was your wounded ego really worth ruining 2 careers?" "This isn't about my ego. This is about justice." "Justice?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "You want to talk about justice? You manipulated my friends against me. You turned my own social circle into weapons." "I told them the truth about things you said. That's not manipulation, that's information sharing. You had no right. I had every right. You spent 3 years talking about these people behind their backs, using their secrets as entertainment, mocking their relationships and careers. They deserved to know what you really thought of them. They were private conversations between you and the man whose trust you were systematically betraying. Did you really think I'd keep your secrets after you spat in my face?" Another long silence. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. "I'm sorry about Christmas Eve. I was scared and angry, and I handled it badly." "You were scared?" "About the proposal, about Ryan, about everything spiraling out of control. I panicked, and I took it out on you." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the months of lies, the stolen information, the casual betrayal of everyone who trusted her. "Vanessa, if you'd just broken up with me like a normal person, none of this would have happened. If you'd quit your job and gone to work for Ryan honestly, I would have been hurt, but I would have gotten over it." "I know. But you didn't do that. You chose to humiliate me in front of my family. You chose to steal from your employer. You chose to lie to everyone about everything. Those choices have consequences. I can't take it back. No, you can't, and I can't pretend it didn't happen." I hung up and turned off my phone. Talking to Vanessa was like arguing with a mirror. She could only see her own reflection, her own needs, her own perspective. Everyone else was just a prop in the drama of her life. The next few days brought a steady stream of developments. The local business journal published an article about the corporate espionage case, naming both Vanessa and Ryan as defendants in the criminal charges. Sterling Communications issued a statement about strengthening their internal security protocols. Harper and Associates quietly dissolved their partnership rather than deal with the scandal. Vanessa's social media accounts remained dark. Her professional network had completely abandoned her. Even her personal friends were maintaining careful distance, unwilling to be associated with someone facing criminal charges. I monitored it all with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't how I'd wanted things to end, but Vanessa had made her choices. She'd chosen deception over honesty, greed over integrity, cruelty over kindness. The consequences were entirely her own doing. My sister called on New Year's Eve with an update from the social scene. "Evan, I ran into Jules at the grocery store today. She wanted me to tell you something." "What's that?" "Vanessa's been calling all her old friends, trying to get people to vouch for her character in court. But nobody wants to get involved." "That's probably smart of them." "Jules said something else. She said Vanessa's been claiming that you manipulated her into the corporate espionage thing, that you were the mastermind and she was just following your instructions." I felt a flash of anger. Even now, facing the consequences of her own choices, Vanessa was trying to make herself the victim. Did Jules believe her? "Are you kidding?" Jules laughed in her face. She told Vanessa that everyone knows you're the most ethical person in your friend group, and that trying to blame you for her crimes was just making her look worse. I smiled despite myself. Vanessa's attempts to rewrite history were failing because the people who knew us both could see through her lies. "How is she doing? Financially, I mean." "Not well, from what I hear. She had to move out of her apartment and is staying in some extended stay hotel. No job, no income, legal bills piling up. Ryan apparently cut off all contact once he realized she'd been lying to him, too. The image of Vanessa alone in a cheap hotel room, facing the wreckage of her own choices, should have given me satisfaction. Instead, I felt oddly empty. This had started as revenge, but somewhere along the way it had become something else. Justice, maybe. Or just the natural consequences of sustained dishonesty catching up with someone who thought they were too clever to get caught. As I prepared for bed on New Year's Eve, I reflected on the past week. Vanessa had humiliated me in front of my family, stolen from her employer, and threatened my career. She'd lied to everyone about everything, using people as tools for her own advancement. But she'd also taught me something valuable about myself. I was stronger than I'd realized, more capable of strategic thinking under pressure. I could take a devastating blow and turn it into a calculated response. Most importantly, I'd learned that some people weren't worth the emotional energy I'd been investing in them. Vanessa had shown me her true character, and while it was ugly, at least it was honest. Tomorrow would bring a new year and new possibilities. Vanessa would face her legal consequences and try to rebuild her life from the ashes of her own making. But that was her problem now, not mine. I was free. 3 weeks into January, I received a call that changed everything. "Mr. Dalton, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to discuss the Vanessa Cole case." I'd been expecting this call. When you report corporate espionage, you inevitably become part of the investigation. "What do you need to know?" "Can you come down to the station this afternoon? We have some new developments you should be aware of." The police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lighting, institutional furniture, and the faint smell of coffee and disinfectant. Detective Chen was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who got straight to the point. "Mr. Dalton, we've been investigating the corporate espionage allegations against Ms. Cole and Mr. Harper. The evidence you provided has been very helpful." "I'm glad to hear that. However, we've discovered additional crimes that go far beyond what you reported. Ms. Cole has been running similar schemes with at least 3 other men over the past 2 years." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "Identity theft, credit card fraud, elaborate romance scams. She would target men in professional positions, gain their trust, then systematically exploit their finances and business connections." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You're saying I wasn't her first victim?" "Not even close. We've identified at least 6 other men who were defrauded in similar ways. The total amount stolen exceeds $400,000. I felt sick. Everything I'd thought I knew about my relationship with Vanessa was wrong. It hadn't been love that turned toxic. It had been a criminal enterprise from the beginning. "How long was she targeting me?" "Based on the financial records, approximately 18 months. She was very methodical about it. Small amounts at first, gradually increasing as you became more trusting." Detective Chen showed me a file thick with bank statements, credit reports, and financial records. Vanessa had been stealing from me in ways I'd never even noticed. Unauthorized charges on shared accounts, small cash withdrawals, even forged checks for amounts under $200. The good news is that you're going to recover most of your losses through restitution. The bad news is that you'll need to testify at her trial. When is the trial? Probably not for another 6 months. These financial crime cases take time to build properly. I left the police station feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Everything I'd believed about my relationship with Vanessa was a lie. She hadn't fallen out of love with me. She'd never loved me at all. I'd been nothing more than a mark in an elaborate con game. My phone rang as I walked to my car. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Evan, it's me." Vanessa's voice was barely recognizable. Gone was the confident, entitled tone I'd grown accustomed to. She sounded exhausted and desperate. "What do you want, Vanessa?" "I need to see you, please. There are things I need to explain, things you don't understand." "I just left the police station. I understand plenty." "They told you about the others." It wasn't a question. She knew exactly what I'd learned. "How many others were there, Vanessa? How many men did you con before me?" "It wasn't like that. You were different." "Different how? Did you steal less from me? Did you lie to me less creatively?" "I fell in love with you." The words came out in a rush. "That wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to be just another target, but somewhere along the way it became real." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You have a funny way of showing love. Stealing my money, cheating with Ryan, spitting in my face in front of my family." I panicked. When you proposed, I realized how far things had gone, how much I'd screwed up. I couldn't marry you knowing what I'd done, but I couldn't tell you the truth either. So you chose the cruelest possible way to end it. I thought if I made you hate me, it would be easier for both of us. Mission accomplished. There was a long pause. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm going to prison, aren't I?" "Probably. Financial fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage. You're looking at serious time. I deserve it." The admission surprised me. In all our conversations since Christmas Eve, Vanessa had never once accepted full responsibility for her actions. "Yes, you do." "Will you come see me? Before the trial, I mean. There are things I want to tell you, things you deserve to know." I considered it. Part of me was curious about the full scope of her deception, about how long she'd been planning and executing her crimes. But a larger part of me just wanted to be done with her entirely. "I'll think about it." "Evan?" "What?" "For what it's worth, I really did love you. Everything else was a lie, but that part was real." I hung up without responding. Whether Vanessa loved me or not was irrelevant now. Love without honesty, without respect, without basic human decency wasn't really love at all. It was just another form of manipulation. Over the next few weeks, I learned more about the scope of Vanessa's criminal enterprise. She'd been running cons since college, targeting successful men through dating apps and professional networking events. The schemes were sophisticated and carefully planned, designed to maximize profit while minimizing the risk of detection. I wasn't her first long-term target, just her most successful one. She'd stolen more money from me than any of her previous victims, partly because I'd trusted her completely, and partly because my IT background had given her access to valuable corporate information. The irony was bitter. My technical skills, which I'd thought made me valuable and attractive, had actually made me the perfect mark. I could provide her with information she could sell, money she could steal, and social connections she could exploit. Ryan Harper, it turned out, was just another victim. She'd seduced him not out of love or even attraction, but because his PR connections were useful for her long-term plans. He'd been as thoroughly manipulated as I had, just in a different direction. The trial date was set for July. 6 months to prepare, to gather evidence, to build an airtight case against someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of deception. I threw myself into work, taking on additional projects and responsibilities. My colleagues were supportive, treating me like a hero for exposing the corporate espionage rather than a victim of romance fraud. It helped, having people see me as someone who'd fought back rather than someone who'd been fooled. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't escape the fundamental question. How had I been so completely wrong about someone I'd lived with for 3 years? The answer was uncomfortable, but necessary. I'd seen what I wanted to see, believed what I wanted to believe. Vanessa had been skilled at manipulation, but I'd been complicit in my own deception. I'd ignored red flags, explained away inconsistencies, and chosen trust over skepticism. In some ways, that made me partially responsible for what had happened. Not for her crimes, those were entirely her choice, but for my own victimization. The realization was painful, but liberating. If I could understand how I'd been fooled, I could make sure it never happened again. Spring came early that year, bringing warmer weather and a sense of renewal. I started dating again, cautiously but optimistically. The women I met were nothing like Vanessa. Honest, straightforward, comfortable with themselves rather than constantly performing for an audience. In May, I received a letter from Vanessa's lawyer requesting a meeting to discuss a potential plea bargain. She was willing to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, but the prosecutor wanted victim impact statements from everyone she'd defrauded. I agreed to write the statement, but I declined the meeting. I had nothing left to say to Vanessa that couldn't be communicated through legal documents. The statement took me 3 drafts to get right. I wanted to be honest about the impact of her crimes without sounding self-pitying or vindictive. The financial losses were significant but recoverable. The emotional damage was harder to quantify but ultimately manageable. What bothered me most was the time. 3 years of my life spent building what I thought was a meaningful relationship, only to discover it had been an elaborate performance designed to separate me from my money and professional secrets. You can't get time back. You can't undo the experience of being thoroughly deceived by someone you trusted completely. Those years were gone, along with the naive optimism that had made me such an easy target. But they'd also taught me valuable lessons about trust, about skepticism, about the importance of actions over words. In some ways, Vanessa had made me a stronger and wiser person, even as she'd robbed me of money and peace of mind. The plea hearing was scheduled for June 15th. Vanessa would formally admit her guilt and accept responsibility for her crimes. The judge would decide whether the proposed sentence was appropriate. I planned to be there, not for closure or confrontation, but as a witness to justice. Vanessa had spent years avoiding consequences for her actions, manipulating and deceiving her way out of accountability. That was about to end. The courthouse was smaller than I'd expected, with worn wooden benches and faded carpet that had seen decades of human drama. I arrived early, wanting to observe the proceedings from start to finish. Vanessa entered with her lawyer, a tired-looking public defender who'd clearly seen better days. She wore a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Gone was the glamorous socialite who dominated every room she entered. In her place was a woman who looked older, smaller, and utterly defeated. She saw me in the gallery, and our eyes met for a brief moment. I saw recognition there, and something that might have been regret, but I felt nothing in return. The anger that had sustained me through months of investigation and legal proceedings had burned out, leaving only a cold satisfaction that justice was finally being served. The prosecutor read the charges: wire fraud, identity theft, theft of trade secrets, conspiracy, and money laundering. 14 separate felony counts representing years of criminal activity. The dollar amount was staggering: over $600,000 when you included all the victims and all the schemes. When asked how she pleaded, Vanessa's voice was barely audible. "Guilty, Your Honor." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, wasn't interested in drama or lengthy speeches. She reviewed the plea agreement methodically, asking pointed questions about the evidence and the proposed sentence. "Miss Cole, do you understand that by pleading guilty to these charges, you're admitting to a pattern of criminal behavior spanning several years?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand that you'll be required to pay full restitution to your victims, regardless of your ability to earn income while incarcerated?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you have anything you'd like to say before I accept this plea agreement?" Vanessa stood slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the podium. For a moment, she looked like she might collapse. "Your Honor, I know that nothing I say can undo the harm I've caused. I betrayed the trust of people who cared about me. I stole money from people who were generous to me, and I used my relationships as weapons for personal gain." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "I'm not asking for sympathy or leniency. I'm asking for the chance to make things right, to pay back what I stole, and to spend the rest of my life earning the forgiveness I don't deserve." It was a good speech, probably coached by her lawyer, but I noticed she never looked at the victim's section while she spoke. Even in her moment of supposed accountability, she couldn't face the people she'd hurt. The judge accepted the plea agreement and scheduled sentencing for the following month. Vanessa would remain free on bail until then, but her passport had been surrendered and her movements were restricted. As the courtroom emptied, I found myself face to face with Ryan Harper. He looked as exhausted as Vanessa, his career and reputation destroyed by his association with her schemes. "Evan," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything, Ryan." "Yes, I do. I participated in stealing from your company. I helped her betray your trust. I was so caught up in thinking I was the winner in some romantic competition that I never stopped to consider what we were actually doing." I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-serving rationality, but he seemed genuinely remorseful, broken by the realization of how thoroughly he'd been used. "What happens to you now?" "Probation, community service, and about $50,000 in legal fees. I'll never work in PR again, but at least I'm not going to prison." "That's something." For what it's worth, I think she really did love you, in her own twisted way. She talked about you constantly, even when we were together. I always felt like I was competing with a ghost. The observation was oddly comforting, though I wasn't sure why. Whether Vanessa loved me or not didn't change what she'd done, but it did help explain the intensity of her self-destruction when everything fell apart. "Take care of yourself, Ryan." "You too?" I left the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. The legal process was almost over. Vanessa would be sentenced, the restitution would be paid, and I could finally close this chapter of my life completely. My phone rang as I walked to my car. My sister Laura, calling with her usual perfect timing. "How did it go?" "She pleaded guilty to everything. Sentencing is next month." "How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully. "Relieved, mostly. It's almost over." Good. You deserve to move on with your life." "I already have in most ways. This was just tying up loose ends." "Speaking of moving on, are you still seeing that teacher? What's her name, Michelle?" I smiled. "Her name is Maria, and yes, we're still seeing each other." "Good. Bring her to dinner Sunday. Mom wants to meet her." The thought of introducing Maria to my family filled me with anticipation rather than anxiety. She was nothing like Vanessa. Honest, straightforward, comfortable with herself rather than constantly performing for an audience. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and genuine affection, not manipulation and exploitation. I'll ask her, but I think she'd like that. "Excellent. And Evan, I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For fighting back. For not letting her destroy you. For turning something horrible into something that helped other people. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a few minutes, reflecting on the past 6 months. Vanessa's Christmas Eve betrayal had felt like the end of the world at the time. The humiliation, the anger, the sense of having wasted 3 years of my life on someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of money and information. But it had also been a beginning. I'd learned things about myself I never would have discovered otherwise. I was stronger than I'd realized, more capable of strategic thinking under pressure. I could take a devastating blow and turn it into a calculated response. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The red flags I'd ignored with Vanessa were obvious in retrospect, but I'd been so invested in the relationship that I'd explained them away. With Maria, I was more careful, more observant, but also more confident in my ability to distinguish between genuine affection and skillful manipulation. The sentencing hearing a month later was anticlimactic. The judge imposed the agreed-upon sentence: 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Full restitution to all victims, to be paid through garnished wages after her release. A permanent criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. Vanessa accepted the sentence without visible emotion. She'd already served 2 months in county jail while awaiting trial, so she had roughly 3.5 years left to serve. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time to look at the gallery. Her eyes found mine, and for just a moment I saw the woman I'd thought I loved. Not the criminal, not the manipulator, but the person who'd laughed at my jokes and fallen asleep in my arms and made me believe in the possibility of a shared future. Then the moment passed, and she was gone. I walked out of the courthouse into bright summer sunshine, feeling truly free for the first time since Christmas Eve. The legal proceedings were over. The financial losses would be recovered. The emotional wounds had healed. Vanessa Cole was no longer my problem. That evening, I took Maria to dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown. She listened patiently as I described the sentencing hearing, offering comfort and support without trying to fix anything or offer advice I didn't need. "How do you feel about it being over?" she asked. "Grateful," I said honestly. Grateful that I found out who she really was before I married her. Grateful that I had the resources to fight back. Grateful that other people won't be victimized by her schemes. And grateful that it led you to me. I smiled and reached across the table to take her hand. Especially grateful for that. We walked home through the warm summer evening, past the Christmas market square where Vanessa had once tried to stage a public confrontation for sympathy. The space was filled with outdoor diners and street musicians now, the winter drama forgotten in the bustle of city life. I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, trusting, naive, willing to explain away obvious warning signs in the name of love. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder but wiser, more careful but also more confident. Vanessa had tried to destroy me out of panic and desperation. Instead, she'd made me stronger. The irony was perfect, and I couldn't help but smile as Maria and I disappeared into the crowd of people living their honest, ordinary lives. Some stories end with revenge, others end with justice. The best ones end with the simple satisfaction of moving forward, stronger and wiser than before. This was one of the best ones.